to very quickly set expectations. This won't be funny. I've tried to be funny. It's literally my only means of functioning in the world, and it's been a mixed bag when telling my RPG horror stories, but this isn't a funny story. I grew up playing D&D. Before I could read, I knew that Sundays were the days that my dad's friends came over to play D&D. And what kid doesn't want to be just like their parents? I was 7 when I first started playing D&D. When I was 12, my dad gave me my own player's handbook for my birthday. I still have it, even though it's for 2nd edition and the spine has gone. I grew up with my dad as a fellow player and as a DM. I always saw him as a very thoughtful gamer who loved to explore grandiose concepts. Outside of D&D, he's a great guy, a hard worker who kept nudging me in the right direction, to be a self-sufficient man who thought about more than what was right in front of his dumb face. I don't feel like I lived up to his example, but I'm a much better human being than I could have possibly been without him. He was my role model, which is why it came as a shock to learn that the man who encouraged me throughout my life, who loves to have long conversations about politics with me, and who is compassionate around him, wasn't always so. As a kid, I remember asking my mother, they split almost immediately after I came along, why she never played D&D. I think I was 13 or so at the time. She just rolled her eyes and said that she did, once. But my dad and his friends spent the entire session just trying to have their way with her character, and she hated the experience. I was young, so I didn't quite read in between the lines of the story, and while she never discouraged me from playing D&D, or really had anything negative to say about it, looking back on her attitude when telling me about her experience, I can only imagine how uncomfortable she must have been. A few years later, and I'm playing a game with a friend of my dad's, Fritz, and his wife Lana. Fritz and my dad are close friends, but Lana and my dad slowly went from friends to really disliking each other and avoiding contact. Over the course of the gaming weeks, I asked why Lana stopped playing D&D with my dad. So she tells me. She had been playing in a game my dad was DMing, and they had fought some orcs. During the battle, the players getting captured. Before they escaped, my dad reasoned that the savage and evil orcs would surely have their way with a fair elf maiden. Lana described how she had tried to express her anger and disgust at the situation. Apparently my dad laughed it off and revealed to her that she was impregnated with a half-orc baby. She never played with my dad again, and their friendship soured. Even implied, that will do it. It wasn't the only reason they soured on each other, but I think it was enough to start the ball rolling. I had never even seen the faintest hint of such behavior in my dad, but this was a long time ago. It was a different time. That isn't an excuse for messed up behavior or a justification of any sort, just an acknowledgement that being a complete jerk came off more easily to people because it wasn't condemned like it should have been. Even to my hero. It's hard hearing that someone you love did something disgusting, but I digested the information. I realized if such inappropriate acts happened during D&D twice, it almost certainly happened other times, and I can't imagine that an attitude like that was wholly constrained to the table. While he may have thought his actions ultimately harmless, it was gross and wrong. Good people can do bad things too. My dad made my mom uncomfortable and harmed a friendship over pretend forceful inappropriate acts. That is about the dumbest thing I can imagine. My dad's not like that now. Looking back, I can see he did a lot of maturing in the following decades. He's not the crude 20-year-old anymore. He raised me to be respectful of women. He even owned up to role-playing these terrible acts when I asked him about it, and was ashamed at having acted like that. He described himself as being something like a stupid 20-something. I know you can't change the past, but he showed me you don't have to live in it. And just like I learned from his good examples on how to be a functioning adult, I decided I could learn from his bad examples from the past on how not to be a gross DM. I never wanted to be the reason someone was made uncomfortable by stupid role-playing. Intercourse at my table is handled succinctly and vaguely. Be whatever you want, do whatever you want. Don't be gross and don't be descriptive. The door is right over there if you don't like that rule. You want to hit on the waitress? Roll charisma. Grats, she's into you. You go do whatever. You want to spend 100 gold for a group party? Okay, you can do that. Moving on. You're into that bard. Yeah, you take him upstairs. Anyway, you say your character is falling for the farmer's daughter and proposes? Sure, you can start a family. You're hitting on the duke? Roll charisma. Sorry, he's not into you. Each moment begins and ends with a simple acknowledgement, and then we move on to the next thing. It happened. Move on. Even when it's just my close friends and we could dismiss it with a casual, we actually wouldn't act like this, but it's just us, so what's the harm? Sitting around a table with my friends and describing how we totally do something isn't my idea of a good time, to start. And if there's no habit to break when irregular people join the game, then all the better. Most of the stories on this subreddit seem to boil down to jerk was a creep. So much so that it all kind of blends into a creep melange for me. I don't mean to trivialize anything or anyone with that observation. I just realized that it's a problem that hasn't gone away. I was lucky enough to have had a great example be my terrible example, and I'm happy to say he's still my role model. This is a nice look at the other side. It also might explain a little why this situation might happen so often. If a father or even other adults acted this way, some kids might replicate this bad behavior. In general, it's how a good number of bad behaviors are born, which is through parental osmosis. It's important to be like OP and look at the other side and understand how it affects others and want to be better. Like OP said, you don't have to ignore things, just don't describe. This behavior would fix a lot of issues because people want to roleplay inappropriate things too much. Remember, someone's villain is another person's hero. It all depends on your point of view. You can be selfish, short-sighted, and thrive off of other people's misery, or you can treat everyone like you would your closest ally. Anywho, what do you all think about this situation?